Stimson. Samuel, hey, congratulations on your new film, Tim Travers and the Time Traveler's Paradox.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for saying it correctly.
Well, hey, no, thank you for trying to create a title of a tongue twister. I guess the very first question is why couldn't you just come up with a shorter title for your film?
Well, for some strange reason, I, Stimson Snead, have always had an affection for characters with a weird name. And I just loved the alliteration of Tim Travers and the Time Traveler's Paradox. Because in my right down to our logo, I always had to see it for like a Flash Gordon and the so and so, so and so, blah, 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 blah. And I love the idea that in my head, it's always Tim Travers and the Time Traveler's Paradox.
Well,
It's
that
fun to
that
say and it makes me giggle.
well, that explains everything for ourselves. So, it is. You guys just made your world premiere at Cinequest this week, and still going to play again tomorrow. Tell us about your experiences and how did you feel about premiering at Cinequest?
Oh. But it
Someone has to
was
go first.
uh, honestly just moving, to be honest. We've spent working on this film for a year and a half now, and it is so affirming and life affirming to not just have the film done, but then to watch the audience react to it and realize this audience gets it. We're not going over people's heads. We're not so weird that people aren't getting it. People are laughing, they're having a great time, and they seem to get it, and they seem to be connecting emotionally with the arc of Tim's character, which is an arc that means a lot to both me and Sam, and seeing it connect. That was just the best part. And Cinequest is a great place to do it because it is such a good festival that really goes out of its way to see that we get some decent houses and a lot of people in there.
How did you feel, Sam?
The same. I mean, it's a little, a little different for me just because this really is Stimson's baby. But I mean, it is also I'm still such a large part of it. And so it was, it's the usual thing as an actor, where I'm just this was my first time seeing it because I had not been sitting in on any edits or anything, and I wanted to also see it fully realized, all finished. And so, as any good actor does, or creative for that matter, I was sitting there critiquing the hell out of my performance the whole time. But I it was so wonderful with that audience in that theater. Just it felt electric, and I was completely, I think I said it a zillion times afterwards, I was just completely overwhelmed and emotional, and I really could not have asked for a better premiere.
Yeah,
Most excellent.
likewise.
Yeah.
So,
And
Stimson,
just such good people.
they are. It's a very good festival, and the organizers are terrific themselves. So, Stimson, let's throw out that first question: is where did you get the original idea from? What came in your dreams that made you write this story?
Well, if by dreams you mean alcoholic induced stupor, um, I was at another film festival and I saw a time travel movie and I watched this film and I decided to myself that I really, really hated it. Just hated it. And I am a hobbyist when it comes to studying particle physics and astrophysics, but it's stuff that I read about and find fascinating. So, in a drunken rage, I outlined on a napkin what the plot would be to a good time travel story. One in which it was a character who was absolutely obsessed with the science, and the whole film would serve as an excuse to explore that science and what's the most fun I could do with that character. The next morning, after I sobered up, I looked at the napkin and I was like, hey, this is actually an idea here. And I drafted it into a short film script. And we've gone through a lot of changes since then, but that original DNA of the character of Tim Travers really goes back to an angry drunk one night.
And Sam, tell us what initially drew you to this project, this story itself.
Well, it's the story that I love to tell, because it was sort of uh, started by my own doing in a way. I basically made a short film, a short horror comedy called Rick and Ruby a number of years ago. And the last festival that it went to, and I also, for the record, I made this role, or I made this film because I was bored of waiting for better roles as an actor, and I was like, well, I know how to, I can make a movie, why not? And I put myself in it, and so I was at my what ended up being the last festival that it went to on its run due to COVID. And it was this very tiny, rinky-dink little festival that I don't think even exists anymore in its first and presumably last or second to last year. And Stimson also happened to be in that festival and in my shorts block. And with his short film, it was Spirit, right, Stimson?
Yeah, it was an educational kids film about the Mars Spirit rover, in which we had Tara Strong voicing a little cartoon version of the rover.
Yeah. So we were part of the same block, and ultimately went up and did the Q&A afterwards. And I think there were more of us on that panel at the Q&A than there were actual people sitting in the audience. Um, but we, both saw each other's films and both liked the cut of each other's jib while we were up there. And a few months later that summer, Stimson sent me the script for the short version of Tim Travers. And as an actor, I mean, what better kind of script you want to be handed than ostensibly a one-man show. And so, yeah, I immediately said yes because I not only due to that, but also because I was like, oh, this is really well written. I immediately have a read on this character. I immediately love where it's going, this snarky kind of guy, mad scientist type. And so that was where that started. And then ultimately it did so well on the festival tour after the fact that when actually I'll let Stimson tell this part of the story.
Well, the funny thing is, though, going back to Rick and Ruby and how that was a role you wrote for yourself, when I wrote the Tim Travers short, I wrote it with every intention of playing the character myself. And it wasn't until a few weeks later that I'm looking at the script that it's like, I cannot do this. I am not, even if I were a much better actor than I am, I would still be the wrong casting choice for this. So I shelved it. And it really was meeting Sam on that little panel where there really were more of us on the panel than in the audience, where I realized, holy shit, that's the guy. In fact, there is a great little photograph that Sam and I have where you can, of us on that panel, you can actually see me kind of looking over to him going, is he the one? And then so we did the short, in part just because I wanted to do something fun, kind of just for me, something that I could lean into all of my own particular idiosyncrasies with and not have to worry about if it was actually good. But the really surprising thing is that it turned out it was actually really good, and festivals seemed to really love it, and we did great on the festival circuit. And then, in a stroke of bad luck, another feature I was about to direct fell through, but I was able to keep the crew and all the work we had already done for that feature. I just didn't have the money. So I needed a new project I could do at a significantly lower budget. And because the short had done so well, it's like, I guess this is as close to a market test as I'm ever going to get. And we decided to adapt it into the feature. But a lot of the stuff that really carried over from the short, even though there's a hell of a lot that we changed, is that initial read of the Tim Travers character and the idea that we were making something very, very idiosyncratic. Idio space of the word. Idiosyncratic. We were making something very specific to Sam and I's style as a director and an actor, and trying to preserve as much of that as possible into the feature, even as it expanded, the cast got bigger. The short really was a one-man show. That like literally it was a one-man show. By the time we got to the feature, it's much more of an ensemble, but it's still all Sam.
So was the short the basic premise of the short was just him going back in time just to kill himself, or is it
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, every scene of the short is in the feature. In fact, I think some of the most difficult time we had on set for the feature was whenever we were doing one of the scenes from the short, because it was so mentally deja vu to be filming something we've already filmed.
Hmm.
But Sam was 2 years younger and in a different costume, and we had a different location. In fact, there's a random throwaway visual in the feature where the character that I play is walking through his little murder den, and there's this picture of Sam that's been knifed to the wall. The picture is actually a still from the original short film of Sam and that.
Hmm.
Sam, as an actor, is it a delight to be in a short and then become into like a feature film later on down the road?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know far. I mean, it's like a kind of an age-old story that you once you hear it as an actor, you prepare yourself for it. Is that usually what happens? Is that if a short gets any kind of acclaim and it is going to be translated into a feature, 9 times out of 10, the lead actor of said short gets replaced with a star. And I mean, it's one of the big reasons it's so hard to break in as an actor in, the indie world in
Well,
any
that's what I did
way.
wrong. I was supposed to replace you. Darn it.
Yeah, I know, I know. I don't know what you were thinking. But it's it's a blessing when it actually does work out. But I mean, I understand why it usually does not happen this way, is because obviously, like, you're not going to get your funding for your feature unless you have star names. And so I was lucky enough to that either my talent or my utter charm charmed Stimson, keeping me around and replacing everybody else with, or adding to the film with other stars. Um, so it's sort of the backwards way of doing it, but I'm beyond grateful and happy that it worked out this way.
And it really needs to be stated, Sam's performance in both of these films is just such that there was really no replacing him. If he had not been able to do the feature, then there wouldn't be a feature. And it really does come down to that. So yeah, he did a wonderful. If I have any regret about the feature at all, it's that the short is still a really good film, and there's a part of me that's sad that the short has been so utterly eclipsed by the feature.
Well, you're gonna what do we think? The short gonna be a DVD extra? You gotta do
Oh,
something with it.
absolutely. I'm putting
Yeah.
this. It's going to be the short will be on the DVD. In fact, I want to do like a side by side of some scenes because there are some scenes where we really do almost down to the second follow the beats of the short.
Oh, it is one of the weirder things for me to watch myself do it twice and go like, ah, I see you're doing the same affectations again.
If I can put a question to Sam real quick, I realize I'm not supposed to be asking the questions here, but I'd love to hear again about how weird it was for you when you were in those deja vu moments filming.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was weird because having had at that point watched our short so many times due to the festival run, and then obviously reviewing it myself just to use for footage for reels and things like that for like submissions. I was extremely inundated with every little finessed moment of like what I did in those scenes. And so yeah, when we were filming them again, I was like, all right, well, you don't have to do the same thing. You could try something new. But then I was also like, when I got into those days, I was like, I'm so unbelievably overwhelmed with everything else I have to worry about right now that if I have to fall back on my same delivery from the short, I am a-okay with it. And if Stimson doesn't tell us to do it again, we're just gonna keep moving.
I'm I'm actually laughing inside because I was all thinking about the time paradox that maybe Sam actually did invent a time machine, went back in the past and killed the Stimson that was thinking about replacing Sam, and we the version that kept Sam on the project.
I can't say one way or another, but I know the truth.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't remember one way or the other. Haha. Although that's a thought that's going to fester.
Hey.
That is true. So Stimson, when you're writing the story, because I have to agree, time travel movies stories are hard to how can you say to basically craft, is because you always come up with rules that seem to contradict with each other. How do you plan? How did you navigate through what kind of rules did you create for yourself, or you basically say, you know what, hell with the rules?
To me, it's actually leaning into the contradictions. The thing I notice in all the really good time travel movies is they're almost never actually about the time travel. The time travel is an excuse. Back to the Future isn't trying to explore the consequences of him interacting with his parents' past. It's an excuse to have a comedy about a kid who meets his parents as kids. That's what it's really about. Terminator isn't about time travel. It's about a what is functionally a magic, unstoppable killing machine, and how do you deal with the terror of that? And that's something a lot of time travel films have in common. The time travel is an excuse to get to a different idea that the filmmaker wants to explore. I find the actual theories behind time travel interesting enough that I wanted to just explore those theories. And every time travel theory is fundamentally a contradiction. That's why we don't have time travel in real life. But there's a lot of interesting ideas behind it. So for this film, I wanted to craft a character who is as interested in those conundrums as I am. And the whole narrative, and it allows me to make the question of why this works is the question of the film, at least on the surface for Tim. So we outright call out our own paradoxes more than once. The very first scenes of the film is Sam laying out the problems with what's on screen in real time. And he is might as well be talking to the audience. And then we do a lot of the first third of the film does, I think of it, always thought of it as the video game tutorial, because we do have some very specific in-world rules for how the machine works, but we never wanted to describe it. So what we did is for about the first 30 minutes is we show it over and over again, and we show a couple variations of it. He goes through once, then he goes again. Can he take himself by surprise? What happens if two of him go through at the same time? It's funny and it's humorous, but what we're really doing is trying to get the audience settled into a, if not intellectual understanding, an intuitive understanding. Like they get a basic sense of how this should work. And then once we're out of that 30 minutes, we go into other directions with it because now the audience is on the same page. But I always thought of it like it's sort of like a video game tutorial level.
Wow. And Sam, how did you actually get in the character? I want to say not just the character of Tim, but the characters of Tim in your film.
It's a good question, and I've been asked it many times, and I feel like I'm still trying to wrap my head around it because my joke is that I most pseudo joke is that I like completely blacked out, and then you got what you got, um, which is not true. It's I'm not really, I don't really say that I have any kind of method of any kind as far as acting is concerned. I just kind of play it as convincingly as I can and bring myself to it, and that's kind of how I try to approach things. But since this is such a unique project in that I'm largely acting with myself and largely having to literally have chemistry and drive a scene between myself and someone else that isn't there on the day but will be added back in later in digital, visual effects, it was extremely strange. I have to call out one of my body doubles who was there with me day one to the end, David Babbitt, who was brought in and learned the script as just like I did. And anytime you see me talking to another one of me on the same screen, David Babbitt was probably there and was giving me something to act against and was just invaluable for making me seem convincing in any way. And he was literally would watch the way I perform the scene, and then when we do the turnaround, he would do his best to emulate what I had just done 5 minutes earlier and give me the same energy I just approached it with, so that the two me's felt like they were actually one and the same, or in the same space, I should say. So I don't know if that was quite answering your question, but like that was if that was not happening, the only other alternative was it was the me reacting to imagining myself next to myself and having the script supervisor yell the lines from 100 and 150 feet away from Video Village, and me just trying to remember what I did a moment before, but also just, I don't know, going into that feeling of being like a little kid when when you don't have any friends to play with on a given day, so you just start making things up. And so, I mean, I think that's arguably what like a lot of like people do on like Marvel movies and other like heavy green screen stuff where they're like, oh, just imagine all this stuff going on. And like, I know
The
that like,
power of imagination.
right. But I know that like a lot of those actors are often like, oh, it's so much fun. You just get to be a kid again. And it's kind of the same thing.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah.
Stimson. So
Yes.
we mentioned that we didn't want to replace Sam, but you still had to bring in some good stars. You actually brought in some good stars into your
Oh
film.
yeah.
You Felicia Day, is in the film. Keith Davis in the film. Danny Trejo is in the film. Joel McHale is in the film. How did you pull this off? Did you have to kidnap their children or something like that? What?
Nothing so interesting. It's actually very boring. How you get celebrities, anybody can do it. It's, do you have a good casting director? Because what a lot of people don't know, the main purpose of a casting director when you're dealing with higher level productions isn't just to go through and sort through actors. So our casting director was Ronnie Eskel. And so she sorts through actors, sends you the talented one for auditions. But if you're going out to celebrities, what a casting director does is they're lending you their credibility. These actors get offers from crazy people, some of which are legitimately dangerous, and they probably get several hundred of them a day, easily. And so the casting director creates a filter. Ronnie Esco did Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs, countless other films over the years. She is a known player in Hollywood. So when someone like Joel McHale's agent gets a call from Ronnie, they know that Ronnie's not going to work for someone who is going to endanger or disrespect Joel. So you have the casting director, Ronnie reaches out. Joel reads the script, he likes the script, and then we have a brief negotiation that's usually done within about a week. I mean, it's actually remarkably mundane if you have a reputable casting director on your behalf. And that was the case with all of them. We sent them scripts, they liked it, we negotiated, we filmed.
Wow. And of course, it's not mundane to build a actual life-size time machine. Tell us about the production for something like that, and where is it now?
It's in movie prop heaven because it's so big that it could not be salvaged. So it had to be built, and then after we wrapped, it had to be destroyed. Now the thing is, because of the short film, we had to
Stimson, no,
build it.
that's Stimson, that's a lie. I know that you are now renting it out and I live in it now.
Yes.
Cheaper
Okay.
than my New
Sorry.
York
In
apartment,
the lie.
so I had to move in.
Your 24 and a half foot ceilings. So yeah, the time
Hey,
machine prop was built by this guy named Vincent DeFelix, who is a fantastic set designer and artist based in Spokane. I remember when it was time to do the short, he sent me 20 to 30 sketches of different time machine ideas, all intricate, really interesting design. And up in the corner on like the first page, he had a bunch of random doodles and this little triangular thing in the corner that he put in almost like it was there apologetically. Almost like he didn't even give it its own page because he figured there's no way I'm going to go with that one. So naturally, I picked the hardest, weirdest one to build because it was 24 and a half feet tall, has hundreds of different panels to it that all meet at very tiny different angles to it. And so he nearly killed himself building it in time for the short. They did the whole thing in less than 3 weeks. And then when it was time to do the feature, I remember calling and be like, "Hey, Vincent, remember the thing that nearly killed you? I need you to build it again, but this time slightly bigger and with a lot more detail work." So he did it again, but this time he had 2 months to build it as opposed to a couple of weeks. And
Wow.
I was very sad when we tore it down. That thing was my baby. And it was as impressive as it looks on camera. Honestly, a lot is lost in translation. That thing is, when you're in the room with it on the stage, I have rarely seen a set, including big films that I've worked on that I was not directing, where you had a prop like this that just overwhelmed the room. Like every time we had an actor getting out to set, I always wanted to personally do the tour myself, just because I knew there was going to be a reaction when they walked into the room for the first time and saw what we had in mind, what we built.
Well,
Like I remember on the short, Sam, didn't you had a moment of shock when you first got to the set, saw it
oh
for the
yeah, yeah.
first
And I
time?
walked on and I was just like, oh, we're doing that. Okay. I have to live up to this obelisk now.
well, it
In the
looks
script, it's just described
impressive.
as a door frame.
Oh, really?
It was great. Yeah, the script is just described as a door frame, so nobody until they physically saw it had a sense of what the scale of this thing would be. And that's why we've used in all the marketing material. It is very much a character onto itself, like even in the short as well, just from the sound effects it's given. It is Sam's true screen partner, is the time machine itself.
Well, it looks impressive on screen, and you know, I imagine Sam is a pretty tall guy to be being towered by a time machine itself. So
Yes, I was surrounded by a tall man and his look-alike body doubles who were all the same height as him. So it was not a great shoot for my self-esteem on the old height front. I'd walk up to the
Sorry.
actors and be like, "How you doing up there, guys?"
You never asked how the weather was, so I appreciate that.
I knew how the weather was. It was cold. It's
Mm.
cold.
most excellent. Well, I've taken a lot of time from both of you gentlemen itself, but so let me ask: what's up next for both of you? Are we still staying in the indie realm?
Well, for Tim Travers, we are now going on tour through festivals. This is the kind of film that's going to really require some advocacy, but we feel like we've got a film that people are already really starting to love. Every new festival we go to is a chance to get people to go on IMDb and give their feedback and rate it, and all of that feeds into getting this thing out there and sold. So we're just excited for the festivals. Cinequest is our world premiere, but it is only the first, and I imagine Sam and I are going to be seeing a lot of each other this year. After that, for me, I have the movie rights to the book Jam by Yahtzee Croshaw, which I am working on a feature adaptation of. And I'm also working on that same feature that got unfunded 2 years ago, where we did this instead. So I'm good and busy.
How about you, Sam?
Well, obviously we'll be touring with this film, at least for the next year. I mean, it's, it's my best sales pitch to get more, jobs as an actor I could possibly have. Um, if you want to see me do any kind of acting of any kind, it's in there somewhere.
Yeah,
Um,
it's all in there. Sam does all it has all the actings.
yeah, no, I mean, I should just send that to casting directors from here on out and just be like, what do you want? Um, on my end, outside of that, I actually have another film that I'm the lead of that is premiering here at Cinequest on Saturday, and that is at 9:30 p.m. At the California, and it is called Whisper, and it is a psychological horror film that also started as a short, and then we just kept shooting. So that's going on, and then on my personal side, I directed my first feature film last summer, and I am deep in the edit on that as we speak. It's called Can You Dig It? And it is a mockumentary feature comedy about freestyle canoeing, which is a real sport that barely exists, but just barely. And it's a film that takes place in a fictional competition around freestyle canoeing in a remote part of Maine. And so it's very Christopher Guest, Best in Show kind of vibe. And so I'm, like I said, deep in the edit and post-production on that, and that will hopefully be hitting festivals by early 2025.
Wow, sounds great. Well, gentlemen, thank
I've
you.
seen clips of it. It's funny.
Oh,
I've seen
really?
clips. It's very funny. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that one. And also, speaking as one of the investors, I think this film needs to do very well.
I agree. I'd like both of these films to do very well.
Yes, that would be great. I would appreciate
Mhm.
that.
We like all films to do very well. That's why we all support each other. So, gentlemen,
Yeah.
thank you very much for carrying this conversation for Tim Travers and the Time Traveler's Paradox. Right now on IMDb, it's sitting at 9.9. That's a win.
Yes, and we're hoping to get a lot more. And actually, if I can throw in one last plug before we go, we've been talking about our films. Even if you can't make it to our screening, come out to Cinequest. It's going for several more days. There are so many good films here. We've been having a blast seeing these, and this is such a good, supportive community of filmmakers. So obviously see our film, but even if you can't, it is still worth coming out to Cinequest because you're really going to have a great time with all the interesting stuff you're seeing. And I just really want to get that in there.
Absolutely.
Well said, Stimson. You say it everything so well, and remember 9.9. That's as high as Dune 2. So that says a lot.
And we have almost as many effect shots.
That's
Take that as you will.
most excellent. Well, gentlemen, I'm hoping to see you guys this weekend. So thank you very much for this conversation.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.